All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Local Film Talk. I'm your host, Bob Walters. This is the show where we talk to local filmmakers about the projects they're working on. And today we're sitting down with Al Julian, a local writer and producer. He's worked on a lot of stuff you've probably heard of with a lot of people you've heard of. So I'm really excited to have you on. Thanks for joining me, Al.
My pleasure, Bob.
So you actually joined the scene not late. You've been around for a couple of years, but later in life, you had a previous career in the criminal justice system. Tell us a little bit about that and what made you decide to leave that and join the world of filmmaking.
Sure. Well, I appreciate your kindness. I do have a couple of years on me. And actually, I spent 20
Only
years.
As old as you feel.
Yeah, right. That's true. I spent about 20 years as a clinical psychologist before coming here to Chapel Hill to go to law school back in the 90s. And then I spent about 6 years or so practicing law. I didn't like it much. And the last 12 years, quit working last year, 2014. I did a lot of forensic evaluations, which is basically evaluating people that are either coming in and out of prison or coming in and out of drug programs, or sometimes people are already in prison, evaluating them for different reasons. So that was kind of fun. So,
okay.
And
I mean, did you sit in on were you mostly like going over evidence, looking over paperwork, or did you actually get to
no, typically I'd be focused on a particular issue, and attorneys would sometimes contact me for to try to assess psychological damages a person might have incurred in a civil case. Sometimes I'd be contacted by criminal attorneys to see if there were mitigating factors that might relieve their client of some responsibility for what had happened. And I think I mentioned at one point that I've gone up to death row a few times and done that for people that have already been convicted. I also did work for a couple of agencies, Department of Disabilities and Vocational Rehabilitation, where I'd test a lot of people coming out of prison or out of the drug treatment programs for their viability to go back into work or to get more training, and make some guesses about what their relapse potential or recidivism potential would be. So those kind of things.
Okay.
And I did like that kind of work as different than psychology or law. You'd get a piece of work, a job to do. You could do it in a couple weeks and you'd be done with it. Whereas in psychology or the law itself, it takes a year or 2 or 3 to get done with anything. Right.
And like you and I were talking about in the pre-show, you spend 2 or 3 years working on a case as a lawyer, and then they end up settling out of court anyways. So
right. So I tend to be a little, I think, impatient or hyper by nature, even though some of that's worn off my old age. But this suits me better, and I do like the filmmaking part too, because it's also the writing in particular. You have an idea in your mind, you know that you've got a concrete goal of finishing it, and when you get that last word down on the paper, you get the satisfaction of knowing you're at least temporarily done until you start revising at least. And then with a film, it's the same thing. You get something concrete to look at, good, bad, or ugly, from your work. So that's also something I enjoy.
Mm-hmm. And you entered the local filmmaking scene as a writer, correct?
Actually, I wrote my first screenplay about 3.5 years ago. It's now a graphic novel, and here it is, Retrograde.
Retrograde.
Yeah, and it placed in the Scriptapalooza contest back 3 years ago. And I got a guy up in Massachusetts interested in drawing it from the screenplay. And so he drew it, and that's really how I got into it. I also started taking some acting classes right around that same time. My daughter is an actress up in D.C., and she got me interested in acting, and so I decided I'd give that a whirl as well. So both of them kind of came together. So I did a little bit of acting, and as I said, Retrograde was the first screenplay that I've written, and I've written 5 more features since then, and a whole bunch of shorts and a whole bunch of other stuff. Shorts, commercials, you name it. So.
So what's the first thing you got paid for? I assume because Retrograde, if I understand correctly, just came out recently.
Yeah, I just turned my cell phone off here. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Go ahead.
But Retrograde, you said you wrote 3.5 years ago,
Right.
and that one just now came out. So
Right.
not including that one, because I'm sure you've raised a little money for that, but not including that, what was the first thing you wrote that got made into a film or that you got paid to do? You mentioned you'd done some commercial work.
Yeah, the very first film that I made was called The Agent, and I made it with Rob Underhill and Aravind Ragapathy and their crew, and it started a lot of local people. It was basically an idea I had while flying on an airplane, and I was half asleep, and it just came into my mind. I've always loved the Twilight Zone, so it's like a Twilight Zone Hitchcock kind of story, and it kind of went from there. We filmed that. It was about 2.5 years ago, I think it came out, and it had moderate success on the festival circuit. It's still playing around, and I segued from that into writing similar type of genre episodes at teleplay length for a series called Fever Dreams. And we had the second Fever Dreams film, was called The Cameraman, and it came out about 1.5 years ago. And it's gotten a lot of good festival play as well, probably even more than The Agent. And it's still shown at festivals. It's shown just recently at 3 or 4. And the dog's back in here with me. And we just recently wrapped up the 3rd episode, which is called It's My House. And we're putting the 3 episodes together, along with an intro to each episode and the movie, and a close to the movie by one of the characters, played by Jeff Briggs, the bum, which I think is a great character, and Jeff does it beautifully. And we will have a feature, and it's in post-production right now, so we'll have our first feature done, and we're supposed to have it to look at in about a month. So that's been exciting. But the first thing I did was The Agent, which was the first episode in the Fever Dream series.
Okay. Now, that's actually kind of interesting, I guess, going off on a bit of a tangent, the idea that now you planned on this being a feature from the beginning?
No, I was writing these at teleplay length, 22, 23 pages in my mind, and I also even wrote little breaks on them. I thought, well, I'm going to try to write some TV shows like the old Twilight Zone, half-hour TV show. So that was in my mind. And but then the idea came of using the central bad guy character in the first episode to, I don't know if you ever remember an old show called Creep Show. There was this like phantom dude who was shriveled up almost a skull who would introduce each Creep Show episode, and then he'd close it down with some kind of bizarre Aesopian, anti-moral statement. Or Alfred Hitchcock would do the same thing with his shows. He'd intro Rod Serling with an intro and an exit to the show. So we decided we'd have the bum do that. And when that came together, we said we could put these 3 episodes in a package, have the bum do the wraparound stuff, and we got enough for an anthology feature. So that's kind of where the idea came from.
Well, and it's interesting the way you're doing this, and I guess it being a result of you not knowing you were going to put it together and do a feature. But the idea that you have a movie that's made up of segments, but you've actually released the segments ahead of time, getting them out there, kind of building up some word of mouth for them, and then you're going to put them together in this new package and release them that way. That's an interesting way of doing that. I'd be interested to see how that goes.
Well, hopefully it'll go well.
Hopefully very well. Hopefully it's a smash.
We've got R. Keith Harris is the star of the 3rd episode, and he's doing quite well. He's in a movie with Robert Redford. It's coming out next year. He's got a good part in that. So, and he's also on *Halt and Catch Fire* regularly. So,
cool.
TV show. So we're hoping that we got a little bit of a name pull to get more people interested in watching it. We've got a lot of great local actors that are part of the episodes as well. I think most of them.
Yeah, you tend to, especially doing what I'm doing, you tend to learn the names of people. The whole community. You kind of end up seeing the same people over and over again, and then the final straw is watching local TV. News 14 or WRL or something, and seeing a local commercial and recognizing 2 people in the commercial.
Yeah, that's just brilliant. Hey, I know her.
That's weird. That's like a Twilight Zone episode. It's funny you mentioned the Twilight Zone. I had never really gone back and watched it, but my in-laws are big fans of it.
Oh, you gotta watch it now.
Well, and I'd always be over at their place for holidays and stuff, and half the time, Sci-Fi Channel or somebody is showing a Twilight Zone marathon, and they'd sit and watch a couple episodes, and I'd be doing something over at the table and kind of half paying attention. But this past week, actually, just got back from a family vacation with them, and we were up in the mountains in this cabin up in the Boone Blowing Rock area, and down in the valley where we were, there was no cable. There was a TV and a DVD player, and that was it. And so one of the few things that we happened to think to bring up was my mother-in-law brought up season 3 of The Twilight Zone.
Oh, right.
And so in the evenings, when nothing else is going on, or if everybody else went to bed before me, I'm sitting down there and I'm watching these episodes, and I was like, these are actually really good.
Yeah,
it's really good stuff.
Stand the test of time. It's amazing.
And one of the oddest things is, because especially back then, in was it the late 50s, early 60s, there was such a separation between film actors and TV actors. There were like two different worlds. And yet here I'm watching this old episode of this TV show going, is that Charles Bronson? That looks like Charles Bronson. And at the end, boom, Charles Bronson. It's like, oh, okay. And then the next one has Lee Marvin and everything.
Big stars, Robert Duvall, and
right.
I remember seeing him in one. Yeah, there's quite a few stars that you'll recognize back in the old Twilight Zone episodes. But anyway, that was the inspiration for these things.
Yeah. No, that sounds cool. Especially since I've just recently rediscovered that show. Something that you're working on that's kind of in that vein sounds really neat. I don't know if you know, but all the Twilight Zone episodes are on Hulu, so I'm planning on going back and watching those. So if you haven't seen them in a while, go check them out on Hulu.
I think I will. I think I've seen them all. Especially they did the initial version of the show, and then I think after Rod Serling died, a couple of years later they did some more. I don't know if I've seen all those, but I've seen all the ones with Rod Serling intro.
Mm-hmm. Every now and then they do these weird revivals, like there will be a new 2 or 3 seasons of the Twilight Zone or the Outer Limits, like an updated version. Never quite as good as the original.
No, I agree.
So no, that's cool. That's one of your influences. What are some of your other influences that have influenced your writing? And it's worth noting, you were talking about your past work in the criminal justice system. That also seems to have had a big influence on your work, especially the short film that you guys did last year called The Session.
Yeah. Yes. As a matter of fact, I used to run, when I first got into clinical psychology, I worked at one of the Philadelphia state hospitals, and I worked at a forensic unit there, which is where all the criminally insane folks hang out. And I ran a murderer's group for the 2 years that I was up there. And the characters that are in The Session, it's about a murderer's group. And some of the characters were, I think probably woven, I did borrow quite a bit from them. I tried to not make them exactly the same, but I put 2 or 3 together, and this is this guy. So yeah, and I think probably in my profession, I've gotten to know a lot of interesting, sometimes not so nice, sometimes strange people, which I think does have an influence on the kind of stuff I do, even my sense of humor, which is a little warped. But we're probably going to continue The Session. The one we did was just a very short, I think 8-9 minutes piece, but we're thinking about developing that into a teleplay length as well, for like a Fever Dreams episode, because it fits in with that genre of a creepy kind of, twist ending thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a preferred length? You mentioned you've done commercials, which would typically be 30 to 60 seconds.
Yeah,
short films, usually under 10 minutes, teleplays around 20 something, and also written a couple features. What do you find works best for your ideas?
Well, I like writing features, but I've written 6 features since I started with Retrograde. And the problem with writing a feature, my son told me when I wrote Retrograde, he said, "Dad, that's crazy for you to write something like Retrograde, because it's a sci-fi story. It would cost, tens of millions of dollars to make it. Nobody's ever going to make it locally. You need to write something that will be less expensive to make." So then I got into writing stuff for, I wrote a film noir. It's called Shadow Men. And I've written a urban comedy, and it's called Us Too. I've written another sci-fi. No, I've written a kind of a paranormal thriller called Puppeteer. It's probably one of my favorites. And then I've written recently, the last one I wrote I just rewrote it, is called Climbers. It's a feature. So I've written half a dozen features. But the problem with writing the features is, and the Climbers is sci-fi also, it costs a fortune to make, is the investment that would take to make these things. Even the ones that don't have a lot of location or special effects requirements, to make a decent feature film, I think probably you're talking about, having to come up with the 6 figures anyway to give it a real solid shot. That's a lot of money. And more money than I want to put up myself. So anyway, I write the features, but I also write the shorter stuff because I know I can at least co-produce that with somebody, or if I really want to do it, I can produce it myself, pay for it. My goal this year, though, is I had that phone turned off. Sorry about that. My goal this year, and it's been working pretty well, is to start interesting people in making some of the stuff I've written without me having to pay for at least part of it. Right. And that's happened a few times this past year, which feels good. I feel like that's the next step. Now, the big dream, of course, is to have somebody pay me, to make something I've written. But at least I've got, this year, I'm at least coming through with, some people want to make my stuff that I'm not going to have to pay for. I want to make it, and, I'll get the credit, and it won't cost me anything. So. But I also I've written a couple of Doritos commercials. We had one that ran 2 years ago that made the top 20, but didn't get picked. It was called "The Chip Fit for a King." You can see it on YouTube. And my friend Ken Hoff was involved in that. But we had a bunch of local people involved in that as well. And it was really a good commercial. I made one a year before that with Chris Medico and those guys. And that was a good one too. I think we did well on that one as well. And I've written a bunch of commercials just for kicks, basically. Right. And I don't know what I'll ever do with them. I keep looking for contests that will fit in with the commercials I've written. I wrote a whole series of truck commercials, but I think they're good. But I've never seen any opportunity to use them. I have no idea how to pitch. So.
Just out of curiosity, when you write, and this has probably changed over time, but do you write do you just go ahead and write the screenplay, or do you write a story first and then adapt it into a screenplay?
With Retrograde, I tried to write the story first. And I did write sections of it, but it took me forever. It took me a full year to write this. And basically, after getting the story about a third written, I said, this is supposed to be a screenplay. I've got to just learn more about writing screenplays and try to translate this into a screenplay. Now what I do is I think I finally got it in my head that when I write, right now I try to use, it's all visual, like a screenplay is all visual, and I try to just visualize what I'm writing as I go through and just tell the story from a seeing point of view. So I don't really write narrative much anymore. I like writing poetry. I'll write some narrative poetry, but in terms of writing a story, it's in screenplay form now, and it's actually getting pretty easier, I should say. I wrote the Climbers. I wrote the first version of it about 11 months ago, I think, and it took me about a month. So, as versus a year for the first one. So each one gets a little shorter. It gets a little easier to write one. But I think part of that is just knowing how to do it visually much better than I used to. When I go back, I've rewritten all the screenplays that I wrote just because I made so many structural errors. And I think there still are structural errors in some of them. But screenplay readers are quite particular about the way it's got to be formatted. So.
Yeah, format is a big thing to those guys.
Yes, indeed.
So when you write, how often do you write? How long do you write? Do you have a set schedule? Do you sit down at 9 o'clock in the morning and say I'm going to write for 5 hours, or is it more whenever inspiration hits you?
It's when inspiration hits me. When an idea hits me, that's really what'll do it. I mean, I had the idea for Climbers, and my wife and I had taken a trip to France the summer before last. And we spent a week and a half in Paris during that trip, and then we went to some other places. We stayed with a friend of ours, but she was pretty close to the Eiffel Tower, and the story just came to me about the Eiffel Tower, this sci-fi story about 170 years in the future, where this remnant of humanity is camped out on the upper platform of the Eiffel Tower to avoid radiation below and all the mutants that are down there. And the story came. Once the story came to me, I said, "Man, I'm going to go for this." And it kind of fell together in my head, and I knew how I wanted the story to go. And then it was just, I'm going to write this thing, and so it came. But but then there'll be times that go by, weeks, months, where nothing comes to me, and I'll just all of a sudden something will hit me like, hey, there it is. It's a good story, and that's, I don't know, that's the way it usually comes. If I try to push myself to make a story, I mean, I can do a commercial like that, or a short I can. But if I try to make myself come up with a teleplay version or longer story and push it, I can't do it. It's almost got to just pop into my head, and then I can take it from there.
Do you have, I guess I had two questions after that. One was about writer's block. Do you get it, and how do you deal with it? And the other question would be, do you tend to work on one thing at a time, or do you have a lot of irons in the fire?
I've got a fair amount of irons in the fire, and it's funny. When I was a young guy, I had a tremendous problem with writer's block. And I tried to write some narrative fiction back when I was, 25 years younger than I am now. And I actually took a year off from regular work back when I was 35 or 36. And I just spent that time, actually 16 months, just wandering around the earth, trying to write stories as they came to me. And it was hard. I think I wrote about 6 stories, and none of them are very good. If I go back and read them now, they feel awkward and sticky. But the whole time I was, kind of forcing myself to do that. And interestingly enough, I don't know if it's just age. My parents have since died, and it's like it's almost like I guess somewhere in my head there's the block is gone. I have permission now to write whatever I want to, and I've really had no problem with writer's block. What I do have sometimes is, like I said, that if I don't have a real good idea, then I may not do a whole lot of writing for a little while. But
so your issue is more self-filtering, and now you feel free to just write whatever, and you can edit it later?
Yeah. I think that to me, I like doing that. And that's what I've encouraged my son, who's a good screenplay writer at his early young age too. My son co-wrote The Agent with me, and also The Cameraman. And he's also co-written a couple of other pieces with me. He just wrote his first feature screenplay called Dramedy, which is getting really good reviews on Blacklist, no less, which is a very critical screenplay site.
Yeah.
But what I've encouraged him to do is what I'm trying to do myself now. Is you get an idea, or anybody that writes, you or anybody else that wants to write, is just write it, spit it out, get it out there, no matter how bad it looks to you or feels or sounds, and the format's all wrong. Get the product out there, and then go back and hammer at it. Then go back and shape it up. So I think where people get stuck is just spitting out that product, getting it out of their system.
Well, you feel like you have to have a completed idea before you can write it down. It's like, I can't sit down and write something I only know the first few scenes of. I got to have it all figured out. But part of the problem is that, one, you're never going to get around to doing it with that kind of attitude. And two, by the time you figure out all this other stuff you didn't know, you forgot the stuff in the beginning. So yeah, it's all about getting, just write, just go out there, get it down, have something on paper that you can work off of.
Absolutely. And it's funny when you say that. It's usually I have the thing that comes to me. I have a beginning and an end that will come to me. I know how I want it to end, and I know what the basic premise is going to be. But the rest of it is pretty much as I go. I know I'm aiming at the ending that I want. With all the other stuff I'm going to write, it's got to end there, because this is what I like about. I like endings, and I like. I guess it's the Twilight Zone thing. Oftentimes I like a little bit of a twist or a whammy at the end. So I know what the ending's going to be, and I try to get there with the narrative.
Right. So you started out with the Retrograde, obviously, and The Agent, and since then you've written countless shorts. and some teleblaze. Tell us about some of the people you've worked with, getting some of those ideas put together. And I haven't been able to see a lot of your work online. What do you, I know a lot of it's still on the festival circuit, but when you make something, how do you try to get it out there?
Okay, well, that's great. I can do a little pitch here. One thing I've been doing lately is I'm working with, I mentioned Rob and Aravind and the Fever Dreams. Those guys are involved with me in the Fever Dreams stuff. So
very talented guys too.
Yeah, they're talented guys. I've given them their pitch here, but I'm going to give Twin Maples Media a pitch. And I work with these guys on another comedy series that I've written called The Very Special People Show. And you can actually see this comedy series if we've got the first 3 episodes up online. We just got a website made. It's called www and in small letters theveryspecialpeopleshow.com. And if you go there, you can't search engine it yet. We just put it up last week, but if you go there and put it on URL, you'll find it, and you can see the first 3 episodes. But these guys I've been working with for about 7 or 8 months. We've made 3 episodes, and they're comedy shorts. They're about 7 to 8 minutes long each, but it's part of a series where the basic character, the narrator, the host of the series is always the same foolish idiot, me. I like to write myself in a part, so I'm the host, Reginald Simons, and the whole idea of the show is that we are supposedly uncovering people with unique abilities or talents or strange things about them, and each time I get punked by somebody that doesn't really have a very special aptitude, but punks me in the process. So we have 3 episodes, and one of my, and I'll pitch a couple other people, of course, Conrad Arnold and Tim Bell and Robert Gordon are making these episodes with me.
They do the set list for my site too. I'm familiar with their work. They're great guys. Yeah, and then I have one of the guys that's appeared in all 3 episodes, and he plays 3 different characters in the 3 different episodes is Don Sill. And in all 3 of the comedy episodes, he's a little hard to recognize in them because he wears disguises in a couple of them. But he somebody's in the background, I think, there looking for something. That's my wife. She wants some TV time.
No. Car keys.
Oh, they're in my pocket.
Sorry to interrupt.
There you go.
Thank you.
It's all good. Live TV.
Live TV. There we go.
Anything can happen.
So we're real seriously trying to pitch those. We're trying to get them. Ideally, we would love to get them on one of the comedy websites. So our goal right now is just to see if we can get as many views as we can and get as much feedback as we can from people as to whether they think these things are funny. And we've got several more episodes, ready to shoot. So if we do have a lift off, but right now we've got the website going and we're trying to promote those. I'm excited about those. So that's something that I've been doing. What else am I doing? Oh, I'm gonna try my hand at directing. I'm gonna direct my first own short called The Birthday Boy, and that I'm gonna do that in September. And that's going to also star a couple local folks. Tracy Coppage and Tim Bell are going to be in it, and that should be a lot of fun too. Tracy's a great actress, and Tim's a wild man. He'll be funny in it. Right. It's not supposed to be a funny piece though. So yeah, I do continue to write. I wrote a little short piece for Lamont Johnson just a couple weeks ago, and I think he's going to be filming that later on this summer. So the shorter stuff. I can, if I get an idea, I can usually go with it and write it pretty quickly. It's the feature stuff, though. That's where I've got to have the dream come to me, I think. Right. I don't know if I answered your question or went way off base. Sorry.
Well, no, it was just, I asked you what some of your other stuff was that you were working on, but that led to some other questions. I had, it's curious, you started out writing.
Right.
And you've written so much stuff that's gotten produced, but never directed before. And a lot of times in the indie scene, even, here in the Triangle, excuse me, a lot of people want to direct their own material. There's a lot of writer-directors out there. And I think a lot of it, I've fallen into that boat a few times myself. And I think a lot of it comes from putting something on the page. Like you said, when you write a screenplay, you're doing it visually. And I think a lot of times when we write stuff, know how we want it to look, and therefore when it comes time to put it in front of a camera, we know what we want it to look like, so we want that control there too. And I'm curious how, you started out writing, but I guess didn't really feel a need or didn't feel an aptitude for directing yourself. So why did you start out letting other people direct your work, and how comfortable have you been with that, and what made you decide to try directing now?
That's a good question. No, it's not that I didn't feel the need. It's not that I didn't think I might have the aptitude. It's just I really I'm a technological moron for the most part. And I don't know much about, and I know more than I did, but in terms of the technology, the camera work, the angles, the blocking, the how to set up shots, the language, I knew none of it. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go in and make a complete mess of things. But I think I have sat in the background enough now, functioning kind of as a mouth that people would like to close, the actual directors, shut up, getting my 2 cents in the background, that I feel like, I'm ready to give it a try. I think the people have done a good job, basically, that I've involved as directors. I can't criticize any of them. Of course, when you see in your own mind's eye, it's not exactly the vision that they might have. Right. And, it has to be that way. So there would be things I would do differently, somewhat differently, if I was directing each of these pieces myself now. But I couldn't have done it at the time. I didn't know I didn't know. And, I'm still going to make a lot of mistakes with this first effort, I'm sure. But I'm ready to go ahead and mess something up, get some practice.
Go out there and you never know if you don't try. You got to go out there and fall on your face, pick yourself up, and do it again. That's
exactly right. And I think eventually you get better. It's like the screenplay thing. I do feel like I'm getting better at it in my old age as I do more and more of it. At least in terms of getting the format right, it's easier. I'm hoping that the technology of directing, and I like working with people, and I think I can work well with actors. It's more the actual technical crew. I'm not sure that I'm proficient enough to do that, but I'm going to give it a try.
Right. Well, in directing, at least from what I've seen of it, directing, you do have to have a lot of that aptitude, but it's a managerial position, and knowing all the lenses and everything, that's your DP's job, and knowing all the lighting stuff, that's going to be your lighting guy's job. So with the important thing with directing is having your vision and knowing how to convey to other people what you want, and they'll figure out what lens and what filter on the lights is going to get you that look. So you've like I said, you've been involved in a lot of productions. I'm sure plenty of it's rubbed off, and you seem to know what you're doing. So I'm looking forward to seeing how your directorial debut turns out.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate the support, and you'll know. Because it's happening soon.
Oh yeah, definitely keep in touch. I want to.
I'll send you the script. I'll send you the script so you can see what the story's about if you're interested.
Oh, cool! Behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And yeah, when it's ready to come out, definitely let me know. We'll have you on again to talk about what you learned during the process.
All right, and maybe I can even have a link. I can even show it. What the heck?
Cool.
We'll see how bad it is first.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you, we're running up on our deadline. I told you that time flies by. We've been at it for about a half hour or so.
Wow.
But I did want to ask you, because a lot of the stuff you've done previously, like with Rob Underhill, has gone the festival circuit.
Right.
That's how you tried to get it out there. And I was a little interested when you were talking about the Very Special People show. And you were saying that you were trying to put together a package. You didn't say you were trying to get it seen by TV networks. You said you were trying to get it seen by comedy websites. So what are your, as the writer, don't have so much say over that. As a producer, you certainly have more say. But how do you feel about the different distribution networks, how they're changing with the landscape of technology, and how do you try, what do you try to do to get your work out there? What do you find are the best avenues?
The best avenues for me, Bob, are to use people like my son and my friend Ken Hoff, or these people that know the internet and know and know it's available, to try to figure this out for me, because this is not my strong point. but or Conrad Arnold. He knows much more about this than I do as well.
Oh,
so
he gives me tons of advice that I didn't know.
I'm going to rely on others. I will continue to rely on others. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. I guess to wrap it up, like I said, you're a really talented writer. I've seen a couple of your shorts and stuff. I will have to pick up a copy of Retrograde sometime, which you will be sharing at the NC Comic Con in Durham, correct?
I'll be at the NC Comic Con in Durham this year. I'm also going to be at the Oak City Comic Festival. I think it's August 20th in Raleigh this year, and we'll have a booth there where we'll be pitching a comic. And what I like to do things is I'd like to see if I can get a larger publication company interested in producing it. And of course, my main goal, of course, is to see if I can get somebody interested in using it as a storyboard.
Right.
For film. So I'm actually using it as a pitch vehicle too.
Graphic novels are great storyboards.
Yeah, they are. I mean, there it is. Right.
Just ask the people that made 300 in Sin City.
No kidding. No kidding.
Well, cool. That's really great. Is there anything else you wanted to promote? Any upcoming projects you want us to keep an eye out for?
Well, as I said, probably the main thing I wouldn't mind pushing at this point is our new website for the veryspecialpeopleshow.com. Anybody that wants to go and look at those episodes and make some comments, the first 3 are up there for you to look at and enjoy, hopefully, laugh at, or give us a whipping if you don't like them.
Because even negative feedback can be informative.
Yeah, as long as it's caring.
Constructive feedback can be helpful.
Feedback, right.
Angry racist feedback, not so much.
No, that doesn't help.
Feedback.
That doesn't help any. Crap. That's helpful.
Yeah. Well, cool. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Pleasure.
This has been a lot of fun, very informative. And if anybody out there has not had a chance to check up with some Al's work, a lot of it's still on the festival circuit. So go and seek it out. Go check out theveryspecialpeopleshow.com. And thanks for talking to us. I hope to have you on again sometime soon.
My pleasure, man. Good to see you.
All right. Take care.